If you've been seriously injured, your case could be worth millions, and Morgan & Morgan can help you fight for it if you become their client. They've won major verdicts, $12 million in Florida, $26 million in Philadelphia, crushing these lowball insurance company offers. It's free unless you win, and you can start your claim now at forthepeople.com/Pacman, or scan the QR code on the screen, or click the link in the description. Morgan & Morgan, for the people. Now you can feel like a master bread baker or pastry chef in your own kitchen with Wild Grain, the only subscription box for artisanal breads, pastries, and pastas. Wild Grain takes the hassle out of baking. Everything bakes from frozen in 25 minutes or less. No mess, no cleanup. My favorite are the croissants, without a doubt. So flaky, so delicious. Wild Grain's boxes are fully customizable to your tastes and dietary restrictions. Go to wildgrain.com/David to get $30 off your first box, plus free croissants in every box. The link is in the description. Welcome to the show. Greetings from insanely hot, humid, sunny Washington, D.C. We start today with news that I think is simply objectively bad for probably 85 or 90% of political views that are out there, but it's acutely bad for the Trump administration. And the news is that even though you've now heard completely destroyed, obliterated, buried underneath mountains of rubble about the results of those missile strikes on Iranian nuclear facilities, there is now new reporting that that is very much not the case, and that the total effect of Donald Trump's bombing campaign may be nothing more than setting Iran back on the order of a few months. Now, we're going to get to the specifics, but of course, the reason this matters is that part of the case that was made by the administration as to why they did these bombings without seeking congressional approval, without telling Democrats, it was an emergency, we had to do it, but it was really effective, and now we have breathing room before Iran gets back to where it was. That central crux of it seems to have been obliterated. The claims about what happened are what seem to have been obliterated. Now, of course, Donald Trump and his Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth and Caroline Leavitt, they are continuing to insist that ordering these airstrikes succeeded in ways you couldn't even imagine. It was just a complete and total success. But we now have intelligence. We now actually have information from the Defense Intelligence Agency. It's important to remember that the Trump administration and MAGA's relationship with intelligence agencies generally is, if what they say is convenient to us politically, we point to them and say, here's what the intelligence agencies are saying. On the other hand, if what the intelligence agencies are saying is not so politically convenient, we say they don't know what they're talking about. We are currently in the latter situation. According to a DIA assessment that was leaked to CNN and has been confirmed by multiple sources, the strikes did not destroy Iran's nuclear program and didn't even set it back nearly as much as the most optimistic assessments said. The centrifuges are largely intact. The uranium stockpile, as suspected, was moved before the impacts, and it was mostly superficial damage above the ground, not inside the fortified cores where the real work is happening. Let's check out just a little bit of a CNN report on this.
We have major breaking news into CNN. 3 sources tell CNN that according to an early U.S. intelligence assessment, the U.S. military strikes on 3 of Iran's nuclear facilities last weekend did not destroy the core components of the country's nuclear program and likely only set it back a few months.
That's right. So this is an assessment that actually is out from the Defense Intelligence Agency. That is the Pentagon's intelligence arm. And it was based on a battle damage assessment conducted by U.S. CENTCOM after the strikes, according to one of the sources. Let's go to CNN national security correspondent Natasha Bertrand, who has this exclusive new reporting. This is to that question that has been asked about how much damage has been done. This is a real question. It's also a political question that has been to something that Donald Trump has been sort of dealing with here recently. What are you learning, Natasha?
Yeah, look, Brianna, this is the first assessment that we are getting that the U.S. intelligence community has found about the battle damage that resulted from those U.S. military strikes on these 3 Iranian nuclear facilities over the weekend. And as you said, it was produced by the Defense Intelligence Agency, which is the Pentagon's intelligence arm. And it is worth noting that it is a very early assessment.
So obliterated, you can flush that down the toilet. Trump's first claim was completely destroyed. We got an initial assessment and it said, best case, Iran's nuclear program has been set back a year. Now we can debate, was this worth it to set the program back a year? Who are we to say whether Iran can or can't have a nuclear weapon? What about the UN's Nuclear Energy Working Group, or whatever they call it at this point in time? All perfectly reasonable discussions to have, but we have the discussions on the basis of what we know. And what we knew was destroyed, definitely not. Set back up to a year, okay, maybe. We now have a more accurate assessment which says, probably set back by some months. And of course, if it is a setback of only a few months, Trump's 12-day war, which he victoriously came out on top of and achieved peace, for which he should get the Nobel Peace Prize, all of that, no congressional approval, not looping in Democrats, to just be in the same damn situation again a few months from now. So there are layers of issues here. There are the layers of who gets to decide who has nuclear weapons. Well, different people have different answers. There's the layer more generally of seeking authorization for any such strikes, no matter where it is that the president wants to strike. Okay, that's another layer to the conversation. But the most sort of telling and arguably disturbing aspect of this is that after you sort out all of that stuff, the best assessment we now have is that Iran will be right back to where it was a week ago in a few months. And then we're going to have the exact same situation all over again. Now, Trump is, of course, doubling down. He's in Europe for the NATO summit, which we'll look at. He started posting in all caps that everything was completely destroyed. You know, when I engage caps lock on my keyboard, it doesn't make things more true, and the same thing applies to Donald Trump. But even Israel, who Trump, again, typically believes in terms of intelligence, even Israel said the deeper bunkers were not neutralized. Best case, we're looking at like a year plus here, but this is the latest assessment that says a setback of just a few months. The official response from the administration is, oh, the assessment's wrong. Remember, when intelligence agencies tell you things you don't want to hear, you just say that they are wrong. What everybody does seem to now agree upon is that Iran's nuclear capability has certainly not been completely destroyed. We're now in the shades of gray. You do have Trump saying completely obliterated, but now we're mostly operating in, was it set back months? Was it set back a year or more than a year? And again, the latest assessment says it is just a matter of months. So what we have is Donald Trump taking action, potentially illegal action, selling a fantasy to justify the action, all wrapped up in military uniforms and a flag and pumping out images of B-2 bombers on social media. And then when reality catches up to this, hoping nobody notices. Iran's nuclear program was not ended. It didn't buy a long-term peace. It didn't fix anything that was that wasn't already broken. And Trump is desperate for legacy here. That's fundamentally what this is about. Trump wants to be the winner of the so-called 12-day war that he named as part of the branding efforts. He's extraordinarily jealous of Barack Obama because Obama got a Nobel Peace Prize that Trump didn't think Obama deserved. Trump wants the Nobel Peace Prize, and he has enough sycophants around him saying, give it to him, that it's convinced him that maybe he's eligible. But the core of this, the supposed obliteration of Iran's nuclear capacity, best case scenario, according to our own intelligence now, a few months, disaster. And this led to Donald Trump showing up at the NATO summit, quite frankly, looking very, very depressed. A diminished, depressed, low-energy Donald Trump struggled to speak at the NATO summit. Donald Trump showed up looking like a man who, I guess, stayed up all night arguing with his own reflection and losing to it. He lost to the guy in the mirror that he was arguing with, just dejected, low energy, hunched over. He was asked a number of very reasonable questions that we should all be wanting answers to from the President of the United States. One was, hey, we now have a report about your strikes against Iran, which shows the nuclear sites are not destroyed, that Iran's nuclear program has been set back on the order of a few months. What do you think? And Trump goes, they don't know. I believe that it was all completely obliterated. Here's Trump.
Mr. President, what's your reaction to the intelligence reports saying that the Iranian nuclear sites were only partially devastated, not entirely?
Yeah, well, they said it was actually, the report said it could have been they don't know. I mean, they did a report. I could have Pete talk to it because his department did the report. They really don't know. I think Israel's going to be telling us very soon because Bibi is going to have people involved in that whole situation. We hear it was obliteration. It was a virtual obliteration. When you take a look at the ground above, don't forget, the flame is all underground. But everything above, if you look at the before and the after picture, everything above is burned black. The trees, everything. There's one building, but that's a building that sunk substantially into the granite, so that, the fire goes right over it. I believe it was total obliteration. I believe they didn't have a chance to get anything out because we acted fast. If it would have taken 2 weeks maybe, but it's very hard to remove that kind of material. Very hard and very dangerous for them to remove it. Plus, they knew we were coming. And if they know we're coming, they're not going to be down there. There aren't too many people that are going to be down there. Pete, do you have something to say about that?
So this is not a surprise. As Trump has told us many times, he's the expert. When it comes to assessing complex battlefield damage through satellite imagery and working in concert with nuclear experts and former inspectors, throw it all in the trash, flush it down the toilet. Trump knows better. And Trump feels just like he felt the forecast for a hurricane was wrong, so he took a Sharpie and changed the direction of the hurricane. Just like he felt so many things before, Trump feels that the actual intelligence community, with the satellite images and the signals intelligence and the ground sources, they aren't getting it right. He really did destroy everything in terms of Iran's nuclear capabilities. That's all that matters, and it's a perfect example of they have this principle. Oh, the intelligence agencies can't be trusted, or they can, depending on what's convenient to Trump. Trump also asked about what is his response to Iran continuing to say, we're going to keep enriching uranium. We're going to keep pursuing nuclear weapons. And this was really difficult for Trump, who, again, is just getting bad news after bad news. His polling has collapsed. We'll talk about that later. Trump struggles through a barely coherent answer where he basically goes, I don't know what they said, but they really shouldn't be enriching anything, and then sort of issuing a thinly veiled threat, as Trump regularly does. Take a look.
What is your response to the Iranian foreign minister continuing to say Iran will enrich uranium and pursue nuclear weapons?
Well, I don't know if they've said that, but I'll tell you, the last thing they want to do is enrich anything right now. They want to recover. And we won't let that happen, number one. Militarily, we won't. I think we'll end up having somewhat of a relationship with Iran. I see it. Look, I've had a relationship over the last 4 days. They agreed to the ceasefire. And it was a very equal agreement. They both said, that's enough. They both said it. But no, they won't do that. The last thing they want to do, Katie, is enrich. They're not looking to... They're not. Can you imagine? After all of that, they're going to say, "Oh, let's go and do a bomb." There could be a day in the future, and then somebody else taking our place will be saying, "Don't do it," and maybe they won't do it as well. I don't know, but they're not going to have a bomb, and they're not going to enrich. And we believe all of the stuff is down there. We don't think they had nearly the time because to get that out is a very difficult thing. It's not like moving a package or taking this carpet up and moving it. It's very difficult. It's very dangerous to do. We believe it's all down there. We had a tremendous victory, a tremendous hit, and because of that, I don't think they would have been down there because they knew we were coming. When they know we're coming, they're not going to be down in that 30 stories underground. So no, I think it was just a tremendous victory for everybody, including Iran. Look, they've got a country. And they've got oil, and they're very smart people, and they can come back. Israel got hit very hard, especially the last couple of days. Israel was hit really hard. Those ballistic missiles, boy, they took out a lot of buildings. And they've been great. Bibi Netanyahu should be very proud of himself. And they've really been great. But they're not going to be building bombs for a long time.
So this is the foreign policy version of leaving a voicemail at 3 a.m. that starts angry, but it's also a plea to get back together. I can't believe what you did to me, and I'm furious, but also like it would be nice to have a relationship, and do you want me to make you eggplant parmesan if you stop by tomorrow? It's simultaneously all of it combined with depression and the feeling that Trump doesn't really want to be there. It's sort of like he's trying to bluff his way through a nuclear standoff, but he's got a hangover and he'd really rather be home in bed. And then finally, and critically, Donald Trump asked about his upcoming meeting at the NATO summit with Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky, and Trump kind of drifts off. You can almost see that his mind is elsewhere. He drifts off into something between like a passive-aggressive detachment and the possibility that he's going to try to actively sabotage any chance Ukraine has of getting a favorable resolution to the war in which they are not the aggressor, they are the defender. Take a look at this.
And then just changing gears to your meeting with Zelensky later today, can you give us any preview of what the two of you might be discussing?
No, well, we'll discuss the obvious. We'll discuss his difficulty. He's got a little difficulty. Zelensky, he's a nice guy. I mean, I'm going to meet him today. I don't know. I assume we're going to be discussing Ukraine.
Yeah.
And it seems like the most likely
stuff. Is there any restart talks there or anything that you might do?
Well, we're going to see. I mean, I've spoken to Putin a lot, and he actually was very nice. He volunteered help on, as you know, on Iran. I said, no, I don't need help on Iran. I need help on Russia. Okay? I said, do me a favor. Help us on Russia, not on Iran. But he was very nice. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk. I think progress is being made. I think great progress is being made on Gaza. I think because of this attack that we made, I think we're going to have some very good news. I was talking to Steve Witkoff, who, by the way, is terrific, and who knows more about this subject than anybody, the subject of what we were just talking about. He was on last night with Jesse and with Laura and with Sean. And boy, Susie, he has a great take on it. He just explains it so easily. He's really very knowledgeable. But he did tell me that Gaza is very close.
A little difficulty, Trump says, as in Zelensky's country is being invaded and bombed by the dictator that Trump keeps praising and saying Putin's very nice and Putin's very strong and Putin's very smart. What? I spoke to Putin and he was very nice. Imagine showing up to a NATO summit and basically telling the rest of the alliance, the guy you're all trying to stop, whose authoritarian dictatorial aggression is causing global problems and calamities, I spoke to him. He was really nice to me. And as pathetic and humiliating as that is on the world stage, that's the currency of Trump. It's loyalty. It's who likes me or who pretends to like me, if it's useful to them. And Trump is really slipping, very, very much slipping here in front of the cameras and also behind the scenes. And growing concern, I hope to speak to members of the House and Senate about this today during some of the interviews I'm doing in DC, growing concerns that Trump just doesn't know what is going on around him. Let's take a quick break. Make sure you're getting my Substack newsletter, davidpakman.substack.com. And of course, make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel, youtube.com/The David Pakman Show. If you've been seriously injured in a car crash, a fall, whatever it might be, you might be entitled to more than you think because insurance companies are trained to lowball you. That is why people turn to Morgan & Morgan, which is America's largest injury law firm. They've helped clients win millions, 12 million in Florida, 34 times the highest insurance offer that they got. $26 million in Philadelphia. That was 40 times more than the insurer offered up front. And the best part is you pay nothing unless they win your case. No hourly fees, no upfront costs. If you don't win, you don't pay. Filing claims is quick and easy. Morgan & Morgan has modernized the process so you can start and manage your case right from your phone. So if you've been hurt, don't guess about what your case is worth. Find out. You can start your claim at forthepeople.com/Pacman or just scan the QR code on the screen, because fighting these big insurance companies does take a big law firm, and that is Morgan & Morgan for the people. People in my audience know I am a bit of a pastry connoisseur. Our sponsor, Wild Grain, is the first bake from frozen subscription box for artisanal breads, pastries, and pastas. Wild Grain's boxes are customizable depending on what you like and prefer. They've got their classic variety box. They've launched the new gluten-free box. They have a plant-based box that's 100% vegan. And it just takes the hassle out of baking, because all items bake from frozen in 25 minutes or less, nothing to clean up. My experience has been awesome. I love the croissants. I was having people over last week, half an hour before, preheat and throw them in the oven, and people love it. Definitely, the croissants are my favorite. The quality and the freshness of the items is extraordinary, and it is just so convenient. Go to wildgrain.com/David to start your subscription and get $30 off your first box, plus free croissants in every box every month. The link is in the description. The David Pacman Show is, of course, an audience-supported program. Our primary funding source is not a media conglomerate. It's not advertisements. It's not shadowy groups, the likes of which fund a lot of right-wing shows. It's just people in our audience, people who listen to the podcast, people who watch YouTube clips, who say, hey, I think I'm going to get a membership. It's just a few bucks a month. It comes with great perks, including extra content, commercial-free versions of the show, the daily bonus show, access to our members-only soundboard. You can get all of it quickly, cheaply, and easily by signing up at joinpacman.com, and I am really appreciative of the folks who have been signing up. As I've told you, I'm getting a lot of emails from people saying, David, we just have to tighten the belt. We have to pull support for anything extra. And I get that. The David Pacman Show, compared to putting food on the table, paying medical bills, and other things, it's not high on the list. I understand that. So especially in this economic situation, I really do appreciate everybody who's been signing up. I know that you have heard about the military-industrial complex, but what about the IIC? This is the immigration-industrial complex. This is another layer to the mass deportation scheme of this administration that is important to understand, because as immoral and unethical and economically counterproductive as Donald Trump's mass deportation scheme is, as much as it violates the law, as much as it denies due process to people that have a right to due process, there is an entire other layer, which is all of the ways in which this thing is monetized. And that's what I want to talk about today. When Donald Trump says deport them all, what he's really doing is opening the floodgates to billions of dollars in private contracts, no-bid deals, occupancy guarantees at detention centers, and quotas, detention quotas. And a lot of that money, it's not going to border communities, it's not going to struggling cities or struggling small towns. It goes to corporations like Geo Group, or another one called Core Civic. Their stock prices did well when Donald Trump was elected for his second term. So it's important to understand that there was a bet made on deportation, and the people who bet on the mass deportation scheme, they won. These companies, Geo Group and Core Civic, they run detention centers, and most of them are private. Some of them in rural towns where jobs have already dried up decades ago. And a lot of these facilities get paid per detainee, $150 a day for adults, $300 for a family. And the kicker is that they often have minimum occupancy guarantees. And what that means is that their contract stipulates even if there's no one in the facility, we're still going to pay you as if the facility had a certain occupancy rate. Maybe it's 80%, maybe it's 98%, maybe it's that it's full. And guess who is cashing in on this? Because this is not enforcement, of course, this is a business model. Behind the scenes, a lot of people affiliated with Donald Trump's very deportation scheme are making money from the fact that this is happening. You look at Trump's border czar, Tom Homan. He helped ramp up the ICE raids. He loves it. He thinks it's the best thing in the world. Well, one of the elements of Tom Homan liking this is that he was getting paid as a consultant by Geo Group just months before he joined the administration. A clear conflict of interest. It's the business plan. It's the revolving door. You cash out, you come back in, you write policy that benefits your last employer, and then maybe after it's all done, he goes back to Geo Group or wherever. You've got Stephen Miller, evil figure in this entire thing, the central architect, in a way, of Trump's immigration policy in both of Trump's administrations. Now it's his deputy chief of policy or staff, something like that. Stephen Miller has disclosed ownership of hundreds of thousands of dollars in Palantir Technology stock in one of his kids' brokerage accounts. Palantir, as we've talked about, is a major contractor for ICE. They give ICE tools that let them do real-time tracking and coordinate the deportations, systems for managing the so-called self-deportations, identification of targets. He owns stock, and he helped craft the aggressive deportation policies, including elements of it that rely on Palantir technology. Stephen Miller benefits from the very policy that he wrote financially. Tom Homan benefits from his former employer and now going in and making a policy package that benefits Geo Group. And then meanwhile, if you zoom out a little further, a lot of these same companies gave over $1 million to Trump-aligned political action committees for his 2024 inauguration. They were buying something. They got what they were buying. And then you now look at what we're seeing. The raids outside of Home Depot, children taken from schools, families torn apart without due process. And meanwhile, we've got ICE air travel contracts, electronic monitoring systems, private deportation flights. This stuff is all making a killing for the contractors that are involved. So when you look at that, it becomes even more impossible to say law and order is the goal here. This is logistical operationalizing to monetize human suffering. That's what at the core this is about. And they're not stopping. The bills keep coming. There's a new $59 billion House Republican package for funding of the next 5 years of deportation operations. These are investments. It's an investment in a removal economy. We've talked about the military-industrial complex, military contracting economy built to sustain endless war. Republicans love to talk about that when it's convenient. Sometimes they like to fuel it. Sometimes they go, it's terrible. But this is immigration as a permanent revenue stream. That's what they've really built here. And they're pushing to reopen closed prisons in places like Kansas and Louisiana, not because these are humane places, it's because it's profitable. Those are profitable, cheap cost places to operate facilities like this. So Trump didn't need to say the quiet part out loud. When he was talking about his deportation plan, he didn't need to say, and this is a great opportunity for companies to make a lot of money. They understood it. They donated to Trump. The contractors are already cashing checks for it. So understand that when Donald Trump promises mass deportations and screams about illegals, on the one hand, it is placating his base. It's riling up his base. But it's also a sign that a lot of his friends are going to be able to make money. It is all fascistic, but it's also a business venture at the end of the day, and we shouldn't forget that aspect of it. Things went so poorly yesterday with Donald Trump's on-again, off-again ceasefire, which both wasn't working and also was good enough that Trump wants the Nobel Peace Prize, that Trump cracked. And he unleashed a wild, unhinged tirade attacking women of color in Congress, including Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Here's what Trump posted to Truth Social, quote, "Stupid AOC. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, one of the dumbest people in Congress, is now calling for my impeachment, despite the fact that the crooked and corrupt Democrats have already done that twice before. The reason for her rantings is all of the victories that the USA has had under the Trump administration. The Democrats aren't used to winning, and she can't stand the concept of our country being successful again. When we examine her test scores, we will find out that she is not qualified for office, but nevertheless far more qualified than Crockett, who is a seriously low IQ individual, or Ilhan Omar, who does nothing but complain about our country. Yet the failed country that she comes from doesn't have a government, is drenched in crime and poverty, and is rated one of the worst in the world, if it's even rated at all. How dare the mouse tells us how to run the United States of America? We're just now coming back from that radical left experiment with Sleepy Joe, Kamala, and the auto pen in charge. What a disaster it was. AOC should be forced to take the cognitive test that I just completed at Walter Reed Medical Center as part of my physical. As the doctor in charge said, President Trump aced it, meaning I got every answer right. Instead of her constant complaining, Alexandria should go back home to Queens, where I was also brought up, and straighten out her filthy, disgusting, crime-ridden streets in the district she represents, which she never goes to anymore. She better start worrying about her own primary before she thinks about beating our great Palestinian senator, crying Chuck Schumer, whose career is definitely on very thin ice. She and her Democrat friends have just hit the lowest poll numbers in congressional history, so go ahead, try impeaching me again. Make my day. This is like nothing we have seen before. If this were not the billionaire president of the United States, if this were a family member, if this were a loved one, if this were a coworker, you would be concerned because it would be a sign of someone who is very, very unwell. Very unwell. But it's Trump. And tens of millions of Americans and everybody around Trump is pretending this stuff is normal. AOC, by the way, did respond in brutal fashion, who said, Mr. President, don't take your anger out on me. I'm just a silly girl. Take it out on whoever convinced you to betray the American people and our Constitution by illegally bombing Iran and dragging us into war. It only took you 5 months to break almost every promise you made. And you know what's fascinating about this? After the break, we're going to talk about someone else who has come to the same conclusion. Trump in 5 months went back on a major promise when it comes to war. It is not someone on the left. It's someone who endorsed Trump, and his name is Joe Rogan. Very interesting development. Trump unhinged, AOC spot on, but it's not just Democrats who are realizing that Trump's flip on war is one of his greatest betrayals. So we'll deal with that after the break. Make sure you're subscribed on YouTube, youtube.com/The David Pakman Show. And this clip, if you're just watching on YouTube now, this clip is part of a daily 1-hour audio podcast that I do. It's on Spotify, it's on iTunes. You can bring it with you to the gym, in the car. Make sure you're getting the audio podcast. We'll take a quick break and be right back. Don't forget that the best way to support The David Pakman Show is by becoming a member, which gives you access to the daily bonus show, the regular show with no commercials. You also get access to our entire archive of every episode dating back a really long time, and plenty of other awesome membership perks. Go to joinpakman.com, joinpakman.com. A completely and totally disoriented Donald Trump attempted to talk on an airplane. Emotions are running high. This was not long after he sat on the White House lawn and said, "Fuck! They don't know what they're doing, Iran and Israel," and had a complete and total meltdown. He was then asked questions, and it's just getting worse and worse and worse. Donald Trump said now he doesn't want regime change in Iran. Here's what you have to understand. Trump wants whatever makes him look strong. And so if your question is, what is his deep foreign policy belief about Iran? I'm sure he thinks that Iran Iran's leadership is radical theocrats, because everybody with a shred of common sense realizes and knows that that is the case. The question is, what does he want to pursue as president? First, it was, we don't want regime change. Then it was, of course we want regime change. And now, once again, after his ceasefire went sort of wacky, and it's clear that nobody sees Trump as strong, nobody sees Trump as intelligent, nobody sees Trump as the guy to go to for negotiations. Now he's just like, I guess I don't want to really see regime change. Let's take a look at that video clip.
Do you want to see regime change in Iran?
No. If there was, there was. But no, I don't want it. I'd like to see everything calm down as quickly as possible. Regime change takes chaos, and ideally we don't want to see so much chaos, so we'll see how it does. You know, the Iranians are very good traders, very good business people, and they got a lot of oil. They should be fine. They should be able to rebuild and do a good job. They're never going to have nuclear, but other than that, they should do a great job.
So he, at this point, is sort of like, what's the exit that makes me look best? And as he said, regime change takes chaos. Chaos is bad for Trump. And so all of a sudden, it's not really the priority. Trump was also asked on the plane, did Iran make any commitments as part of this sort of ceasefire about the enrichment of uranium? And understand that if you are in this space, this is a critical question. Now, you might be someone who goes, who's anybody to tell Iran they're not allowed to have a nuclear weapon? As I've said before, that's a debate that can be had. But if we are in the environment where the bombing was to stop the enrichment, and Trump claims that every enrichment facility was obliterated, but nuclear experts looked at the satellite imagery and said it's not obvious to us that that's the case. And J.D. Vance even intimated they might have moved the nuclear material before the bombing. If you're in the space where the whole point is to prevent the enrichment, a logical question is, as part of the ceasefire, supposed, was there any commitment made about uranium enrichment? Trump doesn't answer the question. Take a look.
Mr. President, did Iran make any commitments yesterday about uranium enrichment?
About what?
About uranium enrichment.
They're not going to have enrichment, and they're not going to have a nuclear weapon, and they know that. They're going to get on to being a great trading nation. You know, they're very good traders. And they're going to be a great trading nation, and they have a lot of oil. They're going to do well. They're not going to have a nuclear weapon.
So did they
The
promise?
last thing on Iran's mind right now is nuclear weapons.
So there it is. Trump's new argument is, we did such damage, they want to bolster their economy. Nuclear weapons are the last thing on their mind, which of course is ridiculous. But more importantly, Donald Trump for years has been telling us the number one thing, the most important goal, the most notable thing that Iran wants is indeed nuclear enrichment. So Trump, ever the diplomat, ever the negotiator, ever the tough guy, walks completely away from that altogether and leaves us to go, so what are the terms of this supposed ceasefire that Trump supposedly was involved in, although the truth seems to be that we're a few bricks short of a foundation here. The topic of meeting with Zelensky at the NATO summit came up. Do you think you'll meet with Zelensky? And what would you say to him? Here is Donald Trump's answer.
Do you think you'll meet with Zelensky when you're there?
Yeah, probably I'll see him. Yeah.
What would you say to him?
Say, how you doing? They're tough. He's in a tough situation. Should have never been there.
I mean, not exactly a person who is coming to the table prepared, ready, and predisposed to get us at all closer to what Donald Trump promised to do on day one of becoming president-elect at the end of the day, which was to end the Russia-Ukraine war. I know that this has been sidelined because of so much other insanity, and it's always, what's a distraction from what? But we shouldn't forget that Donald Trump did promise to end the Russia-Ukraine war within 24 hours of becoming president-elect in November of 2024. He didn't do it. He then said, I will end the Russia-Ukraine war within 24 hours of becoming president, January 20th. He didn't do it. Then it was, I'm going to end the Russia-Ukraine war within 100 days of being sworn in. He didn't do it. And now it's, we may be walking away. Marco Rubio said they may be walking away. Other staffers have said they may simply be walking away. And so it's easy to see a 12-second clip and go, oh, it's Trump being Trump. He's just generically clueless. And he is generically clueless. But it's more important and more relevant to making a deeper analysis of the governance strategy that these are super specific promises of massive geopolitical importance that are just racking up and accumulating failures. Now, if we zoom out a little on the NATO question, he was traveling to the NATO summit after all. Trump was asked, are you still committed to the mutual defense of NATO? One of the centerpieces of NATO is Article 5, which is if a NATO country is attacked, other NATO members are committing, we will come to your defense. Trump's been very lukewarm on NATO. Lukewarm probably doesn't even cut it. He's been hostile to NATO to a great degree. And Trump's answer leaves a little bit to be desired. Take a look.
Are you still committed to mutual defense?
I'm committed to saving lives. I'm committed to life and safety. And I'm going to give you an exact definition when I get there. I just don't want to do it on the back of an airplane.
I hope that people realize how genuinely dangerous this is. I know I've explained that Trump can't be relied upon and that under Donald Trump, the United States seems unreliable. Hey, we're Iran. We signed a nuclear advancement deal with Obama. We're sticking to it, so we're all good. Trump comes in, cancel the deal, put in place sanctions. Wow, the US doesn't seem like a reliable negotiating partner or a treaty partner. And similarly here, the United States has made a commitment to NATO. If every president that comes in just goes, I'll honor it, I won't honor it, the United States seems unreliable. The United States loses global credibility. This stuff matters. And Trump goes, I don't know that I'm going to give you an exact answer right now. I got to get a definition of what Article 5 even says, and I'm committed to life and safety, but of course we know that he's really not. This is humiliating, but it's also extraordinarily terrifying. And if we are looking for any silver linings here, maybe the silver lining is that there are some right-wing people, some Trump supporters, that are maybe reconsidering a little bit. I want to talk about that next. When Donald Trump launched strikes on Iran's nuclear facilities, MAGA world had a choice. They could admit this is a war launched by a guy who told us no forever wars, no wars at all. We're going to end wars. We're going to prevent wars. I'm really the anti-war candidate, right? They could have been honest and said this is what it is. Or MAGA had the opportunity to move the goalposts. And that's exactly what some of them did. They said, well, this isn't really a war because Trump didn't declare it. Others said, Trump didn't really have a choice. This is almost defensive. Trump's not really starting a war. And then some people got very philosophical and they said, sometimes the way to get the peace is by bombing people. But then out of nowhere, Joe Rogan just admits it. Let's take a look.
I think the whole MAGA thing right now is very divided, particularly because one of the things that they voted for was no war. Well, now it seems like we're in a war, right? So, and it's quick. We're 6 months in, and that's already popped off. And then people are very concerned with now what happens to our troops overseas that are in these bases, that are in vulnerable positions. And
so that's not a leftist talking, okay? That's not MSNBC. That's Joe Rogan, the guy who endorsed Trump just months ago in 2024. The same guy who gave Trump a massive platform with that softball interview and helped sell the idea that Trump 2.0 was like a populist reboot and it's definitely better than Kamala Harris. So to a degree, this isn't about going, oh, Rogan, he's right on everything now. When Rogan says this, it matters because it exposes the MAGA split that Trump's second term has unleashed. And Rogan's part of a pretty small group that is doing something from the pro-Trump perspective that very few are willing to do, which is admit that what Trump is doing is the opposite of what he's promised. It's not tangentially different. It's not a 5-degree course correction. It's the opposite. And since Donald Trump bombed Iran's nuclear facilities and started floating regime change, although now it's not regime change, all of that, all that stuff, MAGA has kind of splintered into two primary responses. Camp one is saying, like I said, it's not really a war, targeted operation, it's a mission, it's a message. You call it anything but what it actually is. Camp two says he had to do it, it was Biden's fault, Biden was weak, and it's Iran's fault, and the concept of peace is squishy, and the only way to get back to diplomacy and peace is by bombing Iran. But then there's this third group. And the third group, it's very small, it's inconvenient, but it's growing, and Rogan being part of that group is a good thing. And these are the people who say, wait a second, he said he wouldn't do this, and he did it. It's that simple. That's where Rogan is right now. And of course, Bernie Sanders is sitting there, sitting across from him, and he's nodding because Bernie knows that's exactly what it is. And Bernie knows, let Rogan tell it to his own audience because he's going to be much more effective in communicating that to them than Bernie possibly could be, just because of who the audience is, not that Bernie's not a good communicator. So this isn't new. The same excuses were made under Bush. It's not a war, it's a liberation, we're not occupying, we're stabilizing. And the same people who used to call that deep state propaganda are now cheering it on if it's presented in all caps on Truth Social. Trump used to say stuff like, we wasted trillions in the Middle East, never should have been there. And now he's the one who has been lighting it up and tweeting, now is the time for peace. So it's like Iraq 2.0, but with worse grammar and a lot more social media platforms. And we shouldn't forget that Trump branded himself as the anti-war guy. He told his base, I won't start wars, I'll get us out of wars, I'm the anti-war choice. That was the promise, it was clear. And he's ordering strikes on Iranian nuclear sites. He threatened that there were many targets left. He's talked openly about make Iran great again, like he wants to be John Bolton all of a sudden. So you don't need to be a pacifist to call this a complete reversal. I'm glad Rogan did it. Most MAGA influencers are still pretending this isn't a problem, save a few. And Fox News is calling it strong leadership. Tulsi Gabbard, who knows where Tulsi Gabbard is at this point in time. But when Joe Rogan, one of the guys that helped get Donald Trump elected, says this simply isn't what they voted for, there is a moment of clarity aspect to it. If Trump gets away with breaking this central promise and can hold his base, he can do anything. This was going to be the line. No new wars. The thing that made Trump different from the Bushes and from the Clintons and what Hillary was going to do and what Kamala was going to do is that he wasn't going to do any of this stuff, any of this war stuff. That's gone. Now he's calling it the 12-day war. He says it's a ceasefire, it's over, it's all good. But that doesn't change the fact of what he did. And MAGA is mostly too afraid to call it what it is. Rogan did it. Bernie nods. We'll see what sort of reaction we see from the Rogan base, but it's very interesting. If you value what we do at The David Pakman Show, remember to support us on Patreon. Go to patreon.com/David Pakman Show, where you can get access to behind-the-scenes videos, the daily bonus show, the commercial-free daily show. You can support the show for as little as $2 a month. Check it out at patreon.com/David Pakman Show. I want to discuss with you some of Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s testimony yesterday. The point of looking at this is not simply about, oh, look at how wacky Donald Trump's Secretary of Health and Human Services is. That's true. That makes for a perfectly interesting and fine segment, but we all know that. What is critical to understand is that there are people who are in completely over their heads and also have completely abandoned the very principles they told us matter to them. Those are the two themes to keep in mind. And yes, it's wacky, of course, but let's get into it and I think you'll see. Remember when we were warned by the MAGA right wing that the left, Democrats, the Marxists, the whatever, want to microchip us. They want to microchip for tracking purposes the people of the United States. And you had the religious people saying, this is the mark of the beast. You had the libertarians saying that this is government overreach. You had the conspiracy theorists saying this is the strategy of the left in order to something. I don't even really know what. And the mechanisms were They want you wearing a microchip, these things where you put a microchip in your arm to then tap to pay. That's how they're going to trick you into it. Or they're going to trick you into it by having you get a COVID shot that then puts the microchip inside of your arm. And we very calmly explain to them, why would anyone even need to do that? We all are willingly carrying it around in the form of our mobile devices, put aside for a second that there's no evidence for it or that Bill Gates wants to do it or whatever. But we explain to them, your phone has your location, it has your communications, it has searches that expose your inner thoughts and vulnerabilities and insecurities. Why would you need to do any of that? Well, cut to yesterday. Secretary of Health and Human Services Robert F. Kennedy Jr. said that in his dream vision, within just a few years, everyone will have an even more invasive version of a proverbial microchip. It will be a wearable fitness device, things like Fitbits, fitness watches, the Oura Ring, which goes on your finger, whatever, okay? Check out what he said, and then we're going to talk about it.
Their diet, about their physical activity, about the way that they live their lives. We think that wearables are a key to the MAHA agenda, making America healthy again, and we are going to, my vision is that every American is wearing a wearable within 4 years.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Following up.
So wait a second. We're going to put, because Bobby Kennedy Jr. likes the idea, we're going to put our sleep data, our heart rate data, our movement data, how sedentary we are. We're going to put all of that in the cloud for big tech and government too to access it. That's kind of weird because these were the very same people warning us against that when it was being done secretly, we were told, by Bill Gates and Joe Biden and Big Pharma and Obama and Democrats. It was bad then. But when it's Donald Trump's Director of Health and Human Services actually saying it, we're supposed to say, cool, that sounds really good. When this could be used by government to track us, it could be used by health insurance companies to try to deny us care or raise rates and say, you don't get 10,000 steps a day, you don't even get 4,000 steps a day. You're riskier. You're only getting 5 hours of sleep a night. You're riskier. We're not going to insure you. All of these things, now they would be okay with because it was bullshit to begin with. That's really what's at the core of this. And by the way, wearable, what about every American being able to afford their prescription drugs or not having to choose between their prescriptions and groceries or childcare 1 week, or every American has a primary care doctor, never mind is able to go and get an appointment or afford the copay. What about those as goals? But the dream of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is that we will all have wearable fitness devices. Now, I don't have a problem with these devices. I wear one, okay? I want to know how many active minutes did I get a week. I'm trying to get 150 moderate to high intensity minutes of exercise every single week. The device gives me that information. I want to make sure I'm getting 10,000 steps a day. The device gives me that information. It's not against the devices. I think the devices are useful. But absent basic, dealing with the social determinants of health, are our communities safe? What about air pollution, like Dr. Zach Rubin told us last week? What about simply, are you able to get unprocessed foods in your community? Do you understand what that means? All of these things. And Bobby Kennedy Jr. has a dream. He wants people to have a wearable device. All right. And this wasn't it for RFK Jr. Let's go to the next moment from this. You almost have to admire the honesty here to a degree. Congressman Raul Ruiz asks Robert F. Kennedy Jr., Trump's Secretary of Health and Human Services, a very simple question. Remember that report that was riddled with inaccuracies? You almost have to admire the honesty here to a degree. Congressman Raul Ruiz asks Robert F. Kennedy Jr., Trump's Secretary of Health and Human Services, a very simple question. Remember that report that was riddled with inaccuracies? It was riddled with citations to studies that don't exist. And Caroline Leavitt said, oh, these are merely like typos. These are formatting errors. Congressman Raul Ruiz asked RFK a very simple question. Did you read the report and fact check its sources before you published it? And Robert F. Kennedy Jr. says, I did not fact check. I did not fact check it. All right, well, at least he's being honest. Let's take a look at the video, then I want to talk about this.
Kennedy, you're listed as the chair of the commission. Did you read the report and fact-check its sources prior to publication?
All of the factual
Did you read the reports, and did you yourself fact-check them, sir?
I did not fact-check
You did not fact-check. So why then, as has
all
been widely reported, excuse me, sir, I'm speaking. Why then did the report include a citation to sources that don't even exist? How does that happen under your leadership, sir?
All of the foundational assertions in that report are accurate.
They did not exist. How can they be accurate if they did not exist, sir?
Some of the citations
You know, in fact, my understanding is that even once the report was updated, more authors and researchers came forward stating that their research was misconstrued. This is quite unbelievable, sir. In fact, I was a pre-med at UCLA. They have a great pre-med program. If somebody turned this in as an undergrad to their professor at UCLA, they would have received an F, sir, an F for the misinterpretation, the falsehoods, the denials, and also citing references that don't even exist. That's lying and dishonest, sir. My concern here is that you and this administration are undertaking vast changes to our federal public health system and using purported facts and gold standard evidence that you claim to have as justifications for your decisions, actions, and frankly, your decimation of our nation's public health infrastructure. Yet, what you are relying upon isn't real. It isn't data-driven. And it isn't based in fact, science, or reality. Sir, it's wrong. As the secretary of one of the most consequential departments within our federal government, mischaracterizing data is not just some typos in a report that gets put on a shelf. Instead, your words and your words of your department carry significant weight. Do you agree?
The citations in that report were wrong. That was a mistake. They were corrected within 24 hours.
Yeah, but they were wrong still even after that, and they're wrong still today.
There were no
So do you believe that your words carry significant weight?
There were no erroneous.
Do you believe your words carry significant weight?
There were no erroneous factual
Do
concerns.
you believe that the Secretary of the Department of Health and Human Services plays an important role in upholding scientific integrity?
Yes.
Okay, so then, in fact, what is most striking about this is that you've also threatened to bar governmental scientists and researchers from publishing in top medical journals. You've barred them from publishing in top reputable medical journals and instead proposed, quote, creating our own journals in-house.
All right, so it's not, I had a team review it, it's, I didn't fact check. This wasn't a typo. This was an official report that was published claiming, among other things, that there are all sorts of different conspiracies going on, that we need to be worried about all sorts of different things, citing reports, some of which didn't even exist. And Congressman Ruiz pressed him on that issue. How does it happen? And what RFK sort of leaned on was that the foundational assertions in the report are accurate. Now, it's really important to understand that that is not a standard that would fly anywhere that there is a robust and rigorous standard for when we make claims. You know, you could look at academia, but maybe you think academia has been corrupted. So you could look at book publishing, or you could look at medical studies, or you could look at, if you put together a report to citations that are imaginary, you're not allowed to just go, the conclusions, the underlying assertions, they're still accurate, even if the citations we included don't exist. You would not be able to get away with that anywhere. I would argue that on anything that RFK Jr. is involved in as Secretary of Health and Human Services, at least the same rigorous and robust standards should exist, because we're dealing with people's lives here. We're dealing with health and we're dealing with life and death. So this is what happens when the conspiracy brain fully melts, when the only criteria for truth is, I like the feel of it, I like the vibe. And when accuracy becomes detached from whether something actually happened or whether the source even exists, then we are in a fundamental battle over what even counts as truth, and we know that we are. I've written this, I wrote about this in my book. I have an entire chapter called What Are Facts? Not what are the facts, but what are facts? What sorts of statements even are statements of fact to MAGA world? And it is extraordinarily disturbing to see that this is where we have landed. And this is the person who was supposedly going to come and make America healthy again as part of Trump's MAHA thing. And so far what we're getting is stuff like, maybe kids don't need as many vaccines. We're going to get rid of food dyes, maybe, even though we don't actually have anything legally binding other than just the equivalent of saying, could you please get rid of the food dyes? And we have reports with citations to studies that don't exist now being brushed under the rug as the foundational assertions are still things that we stand by. If this is the direction things are going, and it is, we're in real trouble. Very nice job there by Congressman Ruiz at trying to expose that the emperor has no clothes here with regard to what the Department of Health and Human Services is doing under the stewardship or lack thereof of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. We have a phenomenal bonus show for you today. You can get instant access to the bonus show by becoming a member at joinpacman.com. You can use the coupon code ItWillEndSoon to save significantly off of the cost of a membership. And remember that if the clampdown comes, and from what I'm being told here in DC, it very well may, if the clampdown comes for independent media, the only way I'll be able to get a hold of you and tell you what's going on is on our Substack newsletter. Why is that? If YouTube shuts us down, we have no way to contact our YouTube subscribers. If Instagram, same thing. TikTok, same thing. We own the data on our Substack newsletter. So that is the place where I will still be able to get a hold of you. Sign up at davidpacman.substack.com or send me an email, info@davidpacman.com. Say, David, get me on that newsletter, and I gladly will. I'll see you on the bonus show, and then we've got a new show coming up tomorrow. Thanks a lot for watching today's show. I just want to take a second to tell you about today's sponsors. If you've been seriously injured, your case could be worth millions, and Morgan & Morgan can help you fight for it if you become their client. They've won major verdicts, $12 million in Florida, $26 million in Philadelphia, crushing these lowball insurance company offers. It's free unless you win, and you can start your claim now at forthepeople.com/Pacman, or scan the QR code on the screen, or click the link in the description. Morgan & Morgan, for the people. Now you can feel like a master bread baker or pastry chef in your own kitchen with Wild Grain, the only subscription box for artisanal breads, pastries, and pastas. Wild Grain takes the hassle out of baking. Everything bakes from frozen in 25 minutes or less. No mess, no cleanup. My favorite are the croissants, without a doubt. So flaky, so delicious. Wild Grain's boxes are fully customizable to your tastes and dietary restrictions. Go to wildgrain.com/David to get $30 off your first box, plus free croissants in every box. The link is in the description.